AITA for taking legal action after my mom and stepdad used my savings for my stepsister? I remember the day my parents sat me down in the living room as if it had happened yesterday. I was 7 years old, wearing my purple dress with butterflies, my favorite one, and clutching my worn-out teddy bear against my chest. "Honey, come sit with us for a moment," my mom, Susan, told me in a voice that was far too calm. My dad, David, was sitting next to her on the couch. There was no yelling, no slamming doors or things flying around like in the movies. Just two adults who no longer loved each other, trying to explain to a little girl that her life was going to change. "Megan," my dad said, speaking to me slowly, "your mom and I are not going to live together anymore. We are getting a divorce, but we both still love you just the same. And you need to know that you are not to blame for anything." I didn't cry. Maybe I was too young to truly understand what was happening. I only remember that weird feeling in my stomach, like when you are in a car going really fast and you hit a bump. They organized everything in such an orderly way that it seemed like just another formality. My mom kept the house. My dad moved into a new apartment, and I gained 2 bedrooms. 1 week with my mom, another week with my dad. The custody arrangement was left like that, very clear. My dad, as always, made sure my mom and I never lacked anything. He paid child support on time through the state system and was always checking in on me. About a year after the divorce, my dad met Sarah. I remember perfectly the first time he introduced her to me at a neighborhood coffee shop called the Silver Spoon. It was one of those places with metal tables, flimsy napkins, and the smell of freshly brewed coffee. Sarah had very kind eyes and a warm smile. Next to her was her son, Leo, playing with his fries and building towers out of sugar packets. "Megan, this is Sarah," my dad said, looking a little nervous. "And this is Leo." "Hi, Megan," she told me with a smile that crinkled the corners of her eyes. "Your dad has told me so much about you." Leo looked up from his plate and asked me directly, "Are you going to be my sister?" I liked them from the very first moment. Sarah didn't try too hard. She didn't fake an exaggerated politeness like other dates of my dad's I had met before. She was just natural. And Leo, who was 3 years younger than me, slowly started to become the brother I never had. Around the same time, my mom started dating a man named Mark. You could tell the relationship was serious because shortly after, he was already living in the house. Mom seemed different, distracted, always with her phone in her hand, and sometimes she would touch her belly when she thought no one was looking. They got married in a civil ceremony at the courthouse, a tiny ceremony with hardly any guests. And 2 months later, my younger sister, Haley, was born. I remember standing in the hospital room looking at that little pink bundle in my mom's arms. Mark was hovering over them, completely smitten, as if the world had shrunk down to just the 2 of them. I was in a corner shifting my weight from one foot to the other, feeling like I was watching them paint a family portrait that I wasn't in at all. That same year, my dad and Sarah also got married. Their wedding was completely different. From the beginning, they made sure Leo and I felt like a part of everything. Sarah let me go dress shopping with her and asked for my opinion as if I were an adult. On the day of the ceremony, in a simple but beautiful hall, my dad did something I will never forget. When they said their vows, he turned to us and spoke with a slightly broken voice. "Today I am not just gaining a wife," he said, looking at Sarah and then at me and Leo. "Today I am gaining another son to love. And our 2 incredible children are gaining a bigger family." That night, when Sarah tucked me into bed in my room at their house, she kissed my forehead and said, "You know, Megan, I always wanted a daughter. Thank you for letting me be a part of your life." I hugged her tightly. In that moment I knew that even though my family wasn't normal, I at least had one home where I truly felt I belonged. Life at my mom's house changed after Haley was born. It wasn't that they yelled at me or treated me openly badly. It was more like I was slowly fading away, becoming invisible. Mom quit her job to be a full-time stay-at-home mom, and everything started to revolve around the baby. At first, I kept telling myself it was normal, that babies need more attention, but months went by and the forgetfulness started. First it was little things, then bigger ones. I clearly remember a rainy afternoon standing outside the school with my backpack, watching the other kids leave with their parents after the parent-teacher conference. My teacher, Mrs. Davis, stayed with me for almost an hour. "I'm going to call your mom, okay, Megan?" she told me, looking concerned. She took out her phone and dialed. Hi Susan, this is Megan's teacher. Today was the parent-teacher conference. Oh my God, was it today? My mom's voice sounded choppy through the line. I am so sorry. I was in a mommy and me class with Haley. Can we reschedule? We never rescheduled anything. That day, Mark went to pick me up without even getting out of the car. He had his phone to his ear talking about work and practically didn't even look at me while driving home. Then came my 10th birthday. I woke up excited. I ran down the stairs expecting balloons, a cake, or at least a happy birthday. I found my mom leaning over Haley in the kitchen giving her breakfast. Mom, I said, lingering in the doorway. Do you know what day it is today? Mom lifted her head distractedly. Today is Tuesday, sweetheart, and I have to take Haley to the doctor. I don't know how I'm going to have time for everything. It's my birthday, I said, feeling my stomach tie into knots. Her eyes flew open. Oh, Megan, forgive me truly. Look, we'll celebrate this weekend. Okay. Today I'm going crazy with Haley's appointment, but on Saturday we'll do something nice. The weekend came and went. No one mentioned my birthday again. It became easier and easier to be at my dad's house. Sarah always made sure my favorite cookies were in the pantry. Leo and I could spend hours playing video games, doing homework together, or watching shows. My dad never missed a single school event, and Sarah almost always went with him, taking pictures and smiling as if I were her real daughter. I started spending more and more time there. Random days turned into weeks, then months. At my mom's house, no one seemed to notice if I was there or not. They were always busy with Haley, feeding her, taking her to classes, parties, and playdates. Mark would get home from work, kiss the little girl on the forehead, and lock himself in his office. Sometimes I wondered if they would even notice if I disappeared completely. After about 6 months of practically living with my dad, he decided it was time to make it official. I talked to your mom today. He told me one afternoon while we were in the living room. I think it makes more sense for you to live here full time. You are hardly ever over there anymore. I will take care of you, and I am going to file a motion to stop paying her child support because the support was for your expenses while staying with her. That very night, my mom arrived at my dad's house like a bullet. Suddenly she was there with a face full of concern and a sweet voice, as if we had been inseparable all that time. My sweetie, I've missed you so much, she said, hugging me like she hadn't done since who knows when. I've been thinking, and I want us to go back to the original agreement. I want you to be with me half the time like before. I was 12 years old, I wasn't that naive anymore. I could clearly see the difference between her speech and her real interest. It wasn't about me, it was the child support. The sudden concern, the promises that everything was going to be different, that she was going to pay more attention to me, that we were going to do things together. It all reeked of money. Haley was about 5 years old when she started rubbing it in my face. She would follow me around the house with that smug little smile and drop her bombs when my mom and Mark weren't around. My dad says you aren't part of the real family, she told me once while I was doing homework at the kitchen table. He says you just come to visit. I tried to ignore her to focus on my fractions. Mom and Dad love me more, she continued. Last night, my dad told Mom he's tired of you coming over. And Mom said it was only a matter of time until you turned 18, the money ran out, and you left. It hurt. Of course it hurt. But by then I had already learned to build walls around that pain. I had my dad and Sarah who showed me every day what real love looks like. I had Leo, who was more of a brother to me than Haley would ever be. Still, hearing that your own mother is practically counting the days until she stops having to take care of you leaves deep scars. The years dragged on until my high school graduation finally arrived. At the ceremony, I was sitting literally between two worlds. On my right, my dad, Sarah, and Leo. On my left, my mom, Mark, and Haley. They looked like two completely different families, and me in the middle like an outsider. When the speeches ended and they handed us our diplomas, my dad hugged me so tight he almost knocked the wind out of me. "We are so proud of you, princess," he told me with teary eyes. Meanwhile, on the other side, my mom and Mark were already talking about my departure before we even walked out to the parking lot. "So," Mark said, jingling his car keys, "have you started packing yet? We can't leave everything to the last minute." They didn't ask me which college I had gotten into, and they didn't ask what I wanted to study. They didn't care that I had earned a partial scholarship to a good finance program at a private university. The only thing they wanted to know was when I was moving out of their house. 2 weeks later, I took my things to my dad's house. I remember sitting in the living room, gripping the college acceptance letter in my hands, nervous about asking for help with the expenses, even though I knew they would never leave me on my own. "Dad," I told him, fiddling with the edge of the envelope, "I got accepted into the financial analysis program. They gave me a partial scholarship, but I didn't get to finish." My dad and Sarah looked at each other and smiled. "We already have that figured out, sweetheart," Sarah said, pulling out a folder. "Since you were 8 years old, we have been saving for your college. It's your fund. That's what it is for." That summer, I worked at a coffee shop on a very busy corner, the Silver Spoon, to save as much as I could for my personal expenses. I was scheduled for shifts mostly in the mornings, so in the afternoons I could be at home with my real family. Leo and I would go to the movies, play games, and go for walks. Sarah taught me how to cook simple things for when I lived in the student dorms. And my dad, he just kept being himself. Always there with a hug, a piece of advice, or a bad joke whenever he saw me stressed. My mom didn't call a single time to ask about my plans. She didn't drop by the house to see how I was doing. She didn't ask what I was going to study. But by that point, I had already stopped expecting anything from her. College life began amidst a whirlwind of new faces, homework, paperwork, and endless lines. My dorm room was small but cozy. My roommate Jess was nice, but we never really became close friends. Between classes and my part-time job at the campus cafeteria, I barely had time to breathe. Even so, I managed to call my dad and Sarah at least twice a week. They would come visit me when they could, and Leo almost always tagged along, complaining that he had to carry my laundry basket, but bringing me my favorite homemade snacks. My mom didn't call a single time. My 19th birthday went by without even a text message from her. I knew I shouldn't check my phone expecting something, but old habits die hard. That night I made the mistake of going on her social media. There were dozens of photos of her perfect family. My mom, Mark, and Haley at the beach. Haley at her dance recital. Family dinners, Christmas, New Year's. Every photo carefully posed. Every caption talking about family time and loving my family. I wasn't in any of them. It was as if someone had erased me from the album. After that, I buried myself in my studies even harder. I decided I didn't need her approval to succeed. As the years went by, my grades improved, and before I knew it, I was walking across a stage once again receiving my degree in financial analysis. My dad clapped so loud it seemed like I was the only graduate that day. When it was over, Sarah approached me with an idea. "I already talked to my brother Michael," she told me. "Do you remember him? He has an investment firm here in the city. I told him about your grades and how hardworking you are. He wants to meet you." The interview with Michael was very professional. He had the same direct style as Sarah, but with a more serious vibe. "Your credentials are very good," he told me, reviewing my resume. "But I want to make one thing clear. Being my sister's stepdaughter doesn't guarantee you anything here. If you get in, it will be because you earned it. You will have to prove your worth just like anyone else." "That is exactly what I want," I replied. And it was true. I got the job. I rented a small one-bedroom apartment near the office. It wasn't luxurious, but it was mine. I worked harder than I had ever worked in my life. I took on the projects no one else wanted. I stayed late fine-tuning financial models. I proposed complete growth strategies for clients. The results started showing on their own. The accounts I managed showed remarkable growth. The clients were happy. The company was making more money, and Michael noticed. He didn't treat anyone with favoritism, but he did believe in rewarding a job well done. The bonuses and raises came because I had earned them, not because I was Sarah's family. With one of my first big bonuses, I did something I had been wanting to do for years. I went to a sporting goods store and bought my dad a new set of golf clubs. He had been using the same ones for years, all old and worn. For Sarah, I booked a weekend at a spa. She never spent money on herself. For Leo, I bought him the video game console he had been dreaming about since high school. Seeing their faces when they opened the gifts, the genuine surprise, the excitement, filled something in my chest. I might not be in one family's photo album, but I had a guaranteed spot in another. After about 5 years of constant work, I made a serious plan. Every month I set aside a fixed portion of my salary and sent it directly to a savings account. I calmly started researching the housing market. I didn't want a mansion, just something modest but comfortable, maybe with a small backyard, and close enough to my dad and Sarah's house to see them often. The important thing for me was to put down a good down payment so the monthly mortgage would be manageable. That savings account became my most important project, and then came the call that changed everything. I was at my desk reviewing quarterly reports when my cell phone vibrated with a number I hadn't seen in years. "Hello? Megan, my love." I heard my mom's cloying voice. "I've been thinking about you so much lately." I almost dropped my coffee. 9 years of almost absolute silence and suddenly this. "Hi, Mom," I said, trying to sound neutral. "I'm doing fine. How are you?" "I miss you so much, honey. We all miss you. Why don't you come over for dinner this weekend? Haley is home on break from college, and Mark is going to make his famous roast beef." My curiosity was stronger than my resentment. That Saturday, I drove to the house where I had grown up in my new car. A certified pre-owned Mercedes in excellent condition, understated and very professional. Haley opened the door, looked me up and down, and then looked at the car parked outside. "Nice car," she said by way of greeting. "Looks like you're doing well." The house had barely changed. The same furniture, the same photos on the walls. None of me, of course. My mom came almost running out to hug me. "My sweetie, you look beautiful, so professional in that suit," she said, straightening my blazer. "Mark, look at her. She looks like quite the executive." "We've heard that you're doing very well at Michael's firm," he said, pulling out a chair for me. "They say you are one of the best." During dinner, they bombarded me with questions about my job, my salary, my hours, the car, the watch I was wearing on my wrist. "What a beautiful watch," my mom commented, taking my hand. "It looks expensive." "It was a birthday gift from my dad and Sarah," I said. "Of course," she replied with a tight, forced smile. "They've always spoiled you so much." That dinner turned into more invitations. Suddenly, my mom wanted to be in my life again. She called frequently. She would show up unannounced at my apartment with Haley. They invited me to family dinners. Haley inspected everything with calculating eyes. "I thought you made more money," she commented once, looking around my apartment. "It's nice but small." "It's enough for me," I replied. "Well, but with what you make, surely you'll upgrade to something better soon," my mom would say in an innocent tone. Something about that sudden interest rubbed me the wrong way. I felt like they were measuring, weighing, calculating. Until one day, everything became clear. One Sunday afternoon, Haley was at my apartment spending time with her big sister. I was in the kitchen making coffee when I heard a "no way." I walked out to the living room and saw her standing in front of my laptop. I had left my banking app open after paying some bills. "Are you serious?" she said, pointing at the screen. "Is that really how much you have saved up?" I slammed the laptop shut. "It's not right to look at other people's private things, Haley." She ignored the comment. "Why are you saving so much? What's it for?" I hesitated for a second, but I figured I had no reason to hide it. "I want to buy a house," I said. "I need a good down payment so the monthly payments aren't too high." Haley nodded, but I could clearly see the gears turning in her head. She left shortly after with some random excuse about meeting up with some friends. The next day, my mom called to invite me to dinner. As soon as I sat down at the table, I knew they were up to something. She had that expression I used to see when she was about to ask my dad for a money-related favor. "Haley told me you are very good at saving," she said, passing me the dish of potatoes. "That's wonderful, honey. Hardly anyone knows how to save anymore." I kept eating in silence. "You know that Haley has been having a hard time with her college expenses?" she continued in a whiny tone. "And when she graduates, she's going to need an apartment. It would be really nice if her big sister could help her." "Help her how?" I asked. "Oh, Megan, don't play dumb," I thought, but I said it calmly. "Well, look," Mark chimed in, adjusting himself in his chair. "You are already stable, you make good money, you have your savings. Haley is just starting out. It would be the right thing for you to help her with an apartment, so she doesn't start off with so many struggles." "Are you talking about me using my savings to buy Haley an apartment?" I asked point blank. Of course, my mom said, dropping the mask. You already have your life set up. She needs the money more than you do. That's what a good sister would do, right? I replied calmly but firmly. I am working and saving for my own future. I am not going to give Haley my savings. My mom's face changed instantly. So you are just going to let her drown while you sit on a pile of cash? She said, raising her voice. After everything we've done for you? I almost laughed. Everything you have done for me? You mean forgetting my birthdays? Not going to my school meetings? Making plans to wash your hands of me as soon as the child support ran out? You are being very selfish, Mark muttered, avoiding making eye contact with me. A real sister would help, and a real mother would have been there for both her daughters, not just one, I replied, getting up from the table. I am going to take care of myself. Haley is your daughter and your responsibility, not mine. The silence that followed was heavy. My mom clenched her jaw. I knew that in her head, she was already painting me as the ungrateful one in the story. A couple of weeks after that dinner, I had to travel to Singapore for work. Michael had trusted me with an important presentation for an international client, and I would be gone for about 10 days with very little time to check my phone due to the time difference and a packed schedule. I called my mom out of simple courtesy. Just letting you know I'm going to be out of the country for a few days, I told her. It's for work. I won't be very available. Oh, good for you, she answered in a weird tone. Always traveling, always busy. The trip went really well. The presentation was a success and the client was satisfied. But as soon as the plane landed on the way back and I turned my phone on, notifications started pouring in like rain. Bank alerts, one after another, transfers, transactions, balances. I felt my blood run cold. I practically ran to my apartment. I opened my laptop and logged into my account. There it was. A massive transfer to an unrecognized account under the name of Susan, my mom. I drove to her house as if the steering wheel were glued to my hands. I arrived pounding on the door so hard that it was Mark who came out with a somewhat arrogant expression. Where is she? I asked, pushing past him to get inside. My mom was sitting in the living room flipping through a magazine as if nothing had happened. Oh, you're back, she said without getting up. How was Singapore? I shoved my phone in her face with the screen showing the transfers. What is this? How did you take money out of my account? She barely glanced at the screen. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me, I told her, my voice shaking with rage. Your name is right here. It's my account, my money. How did you do it? Finally, she put the magazine down calmly on the table and smiled. She smiled. Fine, she said. Yes, I made the transfer. You had your banking session open on your computer. All I had to do was log in. Haley needs an apartment. You didn't want to help, so we helped ourselves. How did you get into my apartment? I asked, feeling a lump in my throat. She pulled a key out of her purse and held it up in the air. Remember that day I asked to use your bathroom? She said. It only takes a minute to make a copy. I felt nauseous. Are you going to return that money right now? I said, my voice cracking but firm. Or I am going to report you. My mom burst out laughing. Don't be ridiculous. You aren't going to report your own mother. Besides, you can just save up again. You make good money. You have no kids. You have no responsibilities. Haley actually needs it. I'm warning you, I repeated. If you don't return it, I'm going to the police. Or what? She said with a half smile. Are you going to send your mom to jail? Please, Megan. You don't have the guts. Mark stood up and grabbed my arm, pushing me toward the door. That's enough. Go home and calm down. This is your last warning, I said before they slammed the door in my face. Give me my money back. The door shut with a loud thud. That night I went to the local police station. The place was almost empty. I sat across a desk from an officer named Miller, a man with a tired but attentive gaze. I told him everything. I showed him the screenshots, the bank transactions, the messages where I told my mom I would be out of the country. I calmly filled out the police report. For the first time in a long time, my hands weren't shaking. That same night, Mark called me. Megan, drop the charges right now, he said in a voice that was somewhere between threatening and begging. Do you know what you're doing to your mother? She's crying. You broke her heart. I hung up. I had cried many times because of them. Enough was enough. Over the next few months, the legal process moved faster than I thought it would. The evidence was overwhelming. The unauthorized access to my apartment, the transfers, the screenshots, everything clicked into place. My mom tried to change her story several times, but in the end it was crystal clear what she had done. She showed up to the hearing wearing modest clothes, crying, clutching a tissue as if she were in a soap opera. "I just wanted to help my youngest daughter," she sobbed in front of the judge. My motherly instincts took over. I didn't think things through. I had to hold back a laugh. Motherly instincts? Since when? The judge looked at her seriously. "Susan," he said, "what you did was theft and premeditated fraud against your own daughter. The only reason you aren't going to prison is because you agreed to return the money, and you have no prior criminal record. But let me be very clear. This was not an innocent mistake." She was given a suspended sentence and ordered to return the entirety of the money within a set time frame. I also requested a restraining order against both her and Mark. I didn't want to run into them at my front door, at work, or anywhere else. My dad and Sarah were by my side throughout the entire process. They sat behind me at the hearings and brought me food when I got home exhausted. They never once said, "I told you so," for having opened the door to my mom again. "You did the right thing," Sarah told me when we finally walked out of the last hearing. "They had to learn that they can't just use you like that." Leo, in his own style, added the finishing touch. "Well, at least now there's no doubt about who your real family is." He was right. The lines had been drawn very clearly. On one side were my dad, Sarah, Leo, and even Michael, who was incredibly understanding about the whole ordeal. On the other side were my mom, Mark, and Haley, who had shown their true colors in the harshest way possible. 6 months passed. The money was back in my account, untouched, earning interest while I continued to look at houses. I found one I loved, a 2-story, 3-bedroom house with a small fenced-in backyard, about a 10-minute drive from my dad and Sarah's house. I started the mortgage paperwork. It was a ton of documents, but this time every signature tasted like freedom. Only my name was on the contract. Only I would have the keys. My mom has tried to contact me through relatives, friends, and acquaintances. Voicemails saying she has changed, that she's sorry, that she wants her eldest daughter back. I have already learned my lesson. I have no intention of giving any more chances to someone who views me solely as a walking bank account. Yesterday I had dinner at my dad and Sarah's house to celebrate that I'm about to sign the deed. The 4 of us were sitting around the table laughing, talking about how we're going to paint the walls, where the dining table is going to go, and what day we're going to have a barbecue in my backyard. In 2 weeks I am going to sign the papers for my house. My dad is already planning to help me carry furniture and paint. Sarah keeps sending me pictures of couches and curtains that would look perfect in my living room. Leo is figuring out where he's going to plug in his console when he comes to visit. That is family. People who support you, who take care of you, who want to see you do well, and who would never even think about taking the life you are building for yourself. My mom, Mark, and Haley can keep their perfect family photos and their manipulative games. I have something better. A real family, a clear conscience, and very soon, a house with only one set of keys. Mine. Comment. Thank you for spending your time with me today and reflecting on this journey. Sometimes the people who are supposed to protect us are the very ones who make us realize we have to protect ourselves. Setting firm boundaries is never an act of selfishness, but a necessary step toward honoring your hard work and protecting your peace of mind. Family is not always defined by blood, but by the consistent kindness, respect, and unconditional support people show you over the years. It takes a great deal of courage to walk away from unhealthy dynamics and choose healing instead of holding on to resentment. You have every right to build a life where you feel safe and surrounded by genuine love. I hope you always remember your worth and never let anyone make you feel guilty for protecting your future. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments about how you define true family and protect your own energy. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.